Let's Get Personal with you, ladies. I hope everything has been going well. Hello, everyone out there. My name is Mecca McLendon, and I am the founder and CEO of amazingrarerubies and your personal host and Ruby cultivator for the ABCs of Finance segment on Let's Get Personal. Now, I'm really excited about tonight because we're going to transition over into some different things that we can do to help reduce debt. Now, previously, we talked about different types of debt. We talked about good debt versus bad debt. We talked about secured debt versus unsecured debt. And we talked about installments versus revolving debt. Now, you know I'm a huge believer that the best debt is no debt because finances are near and dear to my heart. By the time I was in my mid-30s, most of you know, I was in over $30,000 worth of debt. And we're talking credit card debt. But it only took one encounter with God where he showed me I could be so much more than what I had become, because that is not the life that he has intended for us. He doesn't want us to live that paycheck to paycheck lifestyle, robbing Peter to pay Paul lifestyle. And so that encounter with him encouraged me to start my own personal journey to becoming spiritually, mentally, and yes, financially. And that's what this show is all about. How to help individuals begin their journey to becoming financially, starting and beginning to be right where they are. That is the important part. You got to start where you are, not where anyone else is. And part of beginning to be where you are, it's so important because at that particular point, you kind of recognize I am where I am. And I have to own up to what I did to contribute to where I am. That's why that piece is so important, right? It makes us realize exactly where we are in life, in addition to making us realize that we got to own up to it. All right? So we got to begin to be right where we are. So today I want to talk to you about, like I said, look at some ways that we can reduce debt. Now, you are not going to hear me talk about three things. So let me go ahead and go over them because I know somebody will probably say, well, I didn't hear you mention these things. Why not? So I'm going to go ahead and address that piece now. So you won't hear me say anything about debt consolidation, debt management, or debt settlement. Now, I'm not saying that these things don't work. They can and they do work. But I am all about changing behavior when we talk about getting out of debt. Now, again, where these things do work, I will tell you what I have found and what I have seen is that they don't necessarily help individuals change their behavior. So what do I mean by that? So debt consolidation, normally they're doing the negotiating for you. So this isn't where you're contacting your creditors, you're working out payment plans, you're working out how you can get out of this thing. It's where they're doing it for you. And normally you need a pretty decent credit score for them to assist you with that as well. Then you have debt management. Now with debt management, if you miss a payment, then it could hit your credit report. That's kind of hard, right? So if I miss a payment, you're going to hit my credit report. And that still kind of keeps them in control of your payments versus putting you in control of your payments. And then there's debt settlement, right? So with debt settlement, most of these agencies are going to charge you a fee to help you out. And you're already in debt, right? So now you're paying some more fees that, you may not change the behavior again, getting out of debt. So again, it's not that these things don't work. I don't want anyone out there to think that, if I look at these debt consolidations, debt management, debt settlement, that's not a good thing. Different strokes for different folks. I believed in, again, working my way out of my debt so I could change my behavior. And I never wanted to get into debt again. And trust me, after you go through that personal struggle yourself, you're doing it for yourself, it makes a difference. But again, those are options. But what I want to talk to you about regarding some ways that you can reduce your debt are some things that make you, focus on kind of changing that behavior as well. So what are those things? I'm going to give you about 3 or 4 things tonight. And let's go ahead. We're going to go with 4. So I'm going to give you 4 things tonight. The first thing is stop creating debt. stop. So stop swiping that credit card. Stop doing things that we really can't afford to do. That one moment instant of pleasure is so not worth all that interest and stuff that we pay later. So stop creating debt. You got to get a mindset that you're going to stop adding to your current debt load. You've got to want to stop that. So that's number one. Stop creating the debt. Just that simple. And I know you're like, that's not simple, that's hard. It's simple if you really want to get out of debt. Stop creating the debt, number one. Number two, look at the snowball effect or the avalanche effect. Now, the snowball effect is where you begin to pay your smallest bill first. And that's the one I used, okay? But both methods work, but I like the snowball. That's my personal preference. You begin to pay off your smallest debt first, and then you take whatever extra money you were paying on your smallest debt. When you pay it off, you roll it over to the next debt, right? And you keep going, and the snowball becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, and you get those debts paid off. Now, the avalanche looks at a mathematical way of looking at, like, what is the debt you have with the highest interest, right? And whatever that debt is, you can start paying that debt off first, because it won't accumulate as much of an interest rate. Now, studies have shown, regardless of which method you choose for yourself, they both kind of equal out. They are within, like a half a year max, I think, of each other being paid off. So I know there's some mathematical people out there that's going to go, it's mathematically proper for me to pay the debt that has the highest interest first. But if you're like me, I am a type of person that I like to see consistent, sustained improvement. I don't know about everybody else, but I like to know when I'm doing good. So the snowball effect worked for me because I started with that smaller debt, right? I paid that one first, and it was like, yay, I paid off a debt. And then I rolled that extra money over to the second debt. And I was like, yay, I hit another one, I paid it off. And I kept going, right? Because I like that ongoing gratification that you're doing a good job. Now, if you're a person and you really don't need that, you could start with the avalanche effect and use that higher interest rate. But again, either works. But I would suggest looking at one of those methods to help you reduce debt. Now, that's like when you're really starting to get into it, pay it off, right? But I know you're saying, I'm not even there yet. I'm just trying to get my feet wet in getting this thing done. Okay, let me bring it down a little bit. So we've already talked about emergency fund versus living expense fund. We talked about that a couple of shows ago. I'm not sure how long, but it was a couple of shows ago. We talked about having a minimum of a $500 emergency fund if you make $24,000 or less. And if you make more than $24,000 a year, look at $1,000 emergency fund. So let's say you've got your emergency fund there, because you need to do that first before you start paying off a debt. You need that little cushion to help you out for those minor emergencies that may happen. Keyword minor, right? So let's assume you've gotten that. Now you want to look at that small stuff factor. We talk about the small stuff factor in the ABCs of Finance webinar, which, by the way, we have another class coming up in September. I'll give you more on that. But we talked about that small stuff factor. And so that small stuff factor are those things that you go out and you purchase. You really don't even think about it, whether it's coffee, whether it's having, lunch, 3 and 4 times a week out. You don't feel like cooking, so you stop and pick up something for dinner. That small stuff factor that can really eat up our money that we don't really consciously think about. You want to assess that small stuff factor so you can cut the fat on some of that stuff. Cut it out. That is a great place to start, because you're starting with what you already have and what you're already spending. And remember, we're all about begin to be right where you are. So that's not going to take any extra of going out and getting another job, which that's an option too, right? But you don't have to go out and get another job to assess your small stuff factor. So you want to look at that and understand what are some things that I can really look at and I can really, really cut. Okay, so that's number 3. So we said, stop creating debt first, right? Please stop creating debt. We talked about the snowball effect and the avalanche effect. Now we just talked about assessing your small stuff factor. That is a big piece. The last piece that I will give you, and this is one that people really don't like, but when I tell you, I encourage it so much with people, and that is create a monthly budget. Because when you start seeing where your money is going, it will help you also identify some areas that maybe you don't need or you can reduce. How about that? Some things you can reduce that will help you take that extra money that you found within the income you're already bringing in, that you can take and put on your bills to start helping reducing that debt. Again, the key to all of this is to remember to begin to be right where you are. So it's okay if you're just now getting to that emergency fund, you're just now sitting down to look at your small stuff factor. Great, you're doing good. Keep it up. That's a great place to start. If you don't have that emergency fund yet, that's okay too. Start today. It's never too late. That's the good stuff. As long as we're here every day, it is an opportunity for us to get it right, for us to have that path that we can walk on how we can reduce the debt. So remember I said earlier on the ABCs of Finance, we talked about small stuff factor. Well, we have a class, another class that's going to be coming up in September. So August is already closed out, but we have a class coming up in September. It's going to be every Tuesday in September from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. All 4 classes are only $25. When you get ready to register, you go in and you only register one time. Now you're going to see each class with the price of $25 because regardless of whether you decide to attend one class or all 4, it's going to be $25. So why not take advantage of all 4? Yeah, go ahead and just go do all 4 so that you're not paying $25 for one class, right? We want you to be committed to all 4 classes of the ABCs of Finance. Again, it's a webinar, so we would love to have you there. As always with Amazing Rare Rubies, we pray that this message has been a blessing to you, and we encourage you to keep God in every decision made, lesson learned, and message taught. Again, Latonya and Ray, thank you so much, ladies, for having me tonight. I really appreciate it. I look forward to the next one. You guys have a great one. Love you much.